No, this is great. And I want to pull on two threads now. Words. One you mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned the other one, but this idea of scale
Mm.
and sustainability
Mm.
as we move forward. Because I do think that scale and sustainability tie directly to the instructor experience in the work that I've done also and that we've done around academic innovation. Because you talked about earlier at the beginning about innovation at the classroom level is about communication, building connection with students, and this idea of continuity and engaging in a process, an ongoing process of trying, failing, learning. And one thing that comes to mind is those large enrollment 500 student classes where a student is an instructor cannot be made responsible for building affective connections with 500 students while also doing million other things. So is it possible to have these kinds of authentic, interactive, engaging, meet them where they're at? Can we meet students where they're at when we don't see or meet all of our students, Will?
Right. Right. I think the answer is yes. But this is a place where we need people to really be comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. Um, mental health is the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about students today, and when I think about faculty today, given the coming to this side of the pandemic and what that's done to everybody. Mental health is a huge concern. You and I have had conversations before, and I've had conversations with others about the role of machine learning and artificial intelligence. And I know that those words can scare a lot of people, but and there are ethics debates raging, as we speak, about what the role of AI should be on a go forward basis. Oh gosh, and then it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to Chat GPT, and what that does to our, to academic integrity at the classroom level, what it potentially does, I should say. But zooming back out to an instructor, the last time I taught a third year biomechanics course, there was about 800 people in the classroom. Taught it back-to-back sessions because there's no room. There's no single room capable of hosting 800 people at once at the university. So teach it back-to-back. So we'd have anywhere from 300 to 400 people in the room at a time, and like you said, you can't form relationships, close relationships, with that many people. It's just, so how do you know? How can you know when mental health is becoming a concern for a student? A student needs support in a different way than what you've been classically kind of trained to provide, because we're not mental health practitioners. We shouldn't pretend that we are. So what we've been thinking about is early detection of changes in a person's affect when they're writing, when they're whether it's in response to having to write an essay for a class, or writing up a lab report for a chemistry lab, or everything in between. Seeing when they're engaged in their lectures, when they're not engaged, finding out through the use of data, and an approach like this learning analytics to detect when things are not going well for a student, and be able to intervene as an individual, at that point, to be able to intervene when without the ability to, in the absence of being able to form a genuine relationship with all of those people, which we've already said is generally not possible. Mm. Can we use data to identify those who are at risk or already suffering to intervene and be more humanist in our approach to education that way by using, what is arguably the least human technology.
I know. Isn't it funny? It's called machine learning. And we're making the argument, and I had a conversation with Patrick Thibodeau, and, we're making the argument that machine learning has a role to play in bringing human-centered education back to the fore. And I think it's a bold statement. And again, I think we're playing in the arena. But this really does, it's like that Jenga game. As soon as you pull on these blocks of the student experience, we are inevitably pulling on the instructor experience. And we've talked about an instructor dashboard, for example, and leveraging things like IBM's Watson in the back end, consuming structured data, unstructured data, things that these students are writing maybe on their Twitter account, and producing some level of an analytic that is consumable and usable for the instructor. But even if we think of the most user-friendly interface that could be created for an 800 student class, Will, we're going to start layering on to the instructor experience expectations that were not previously there, and skills that might not be there either. Like, we will require certain skills that are not there either. So, and this is where I get to some really structural elements, and working as the Associate Vice President of Teaching and Learning, I'm particularly interested in pulling on this thread with you, which is teaching and learning. I think I can go on record and say York University's Teaching Commons is a wonderful resource for instructors, but arguably understaffed in comparison to a lot of other institutions, centers for teaching and learning support. And instructors in these environments are asking for more boutique style help. Like, you want me to design an experience in a high flex format where it's offered online and in person, well, I need help. Like, I need someone to sit down with me. Don't just give me a website. I need a human being, or I need resources. Okay, you want me to use this dashboard, but I don't know how to use that dashboard effectively. Do you have the skills? Can you capacity build me? And can you also reduce my workload in another area? This is, again, that collective agreement we get to, but maybe
it's also sustainability.
It's sustainability. Yes, because I find, and you're going to totally resonate with this, change management. You said it earlier, adoption attitudes, fear, frustration. I find you only get, even with champions, it's a small window where they're intrinsically motivated to do something different and somewhat more onerous. And if you don't leverage that window, if they feel frustrated or unsupported, that window closes.
Oh, yeah, you lost them. Yeah. I think the difference between the champions and the people who aren't is the window stays open longer.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's all. You've got this motivation in a person that they see an opportunity to do something better, or and I've said before, the vast majority of our teachers at the university are researchers at heart. You do your PhD, you engage in some form of research, knowledge creation. At heart, all of these people are curious by nature and innovative by nature. So again, we just get back to creating space for that to come out. And so that intrinsic motivation probably germinates around curiosity that's intrinsic just to their nature. And the freedom of opportunity that a faculty appointment creates for a person creates the opportunity for that instructor to do something cool. In their minds, it's cool. Nine times, maybe 99 times out of 100, I think it's pretty cool too. It's cool just to watch these people, incredibly intelligent people, go, oh, well, what if we tried this? And you go, okay, well, how would you do that? well, here's an idea about how to do it. What do you need in order to do that? Let me see if I can get for you what you need. Maybe through the AIF, maybe there's a relationship to eCampus Ontario or CWIL or BHER to put some funding in place. But then you get innovative around the use of that funding and provide, some of that funding to a student who can then, benefit from that funding, because who's not going to benefit from, an extra few grand in their pocket to pay the bills, to pay the rent. But more importantly, from our perspective, is to get that experiential opportunity to work beside a faculty member or beside, a graduate student, and engage in that kind of exploration, kind of co-creating the story with the faculty member. That's innovation too. It's just how do we use the systems that are in place to work together to support the student, support the faculty member, support the intersection of where they meet in the teaching and learning space, and see opportunities for that where maybe others don't. And that's one of the things I appreciate about our team is that we spend an awful lot of time thinking about, well, what's the opportunity there? Is it wherever it might be? How do we move this one project towards something that's sustainable, that can scale? And your project, for instance, with around the micro credentials and the videos, that's eminently scalable, right? Sustainability of it will be defined by how production quality changes over time. New theories, new approaches, new epistemologies emerge that are going to eventually cause your creation to be out of date. But chances are you're going to be the one who puts it out of date because you're an innovative, curiosity-seeking kind of person. There's a lot of us like that around the institution. So it's a continuous process.
And that's the quote, Bruckheimer, I want to call it, but it's that famous quote where it's like, don't beat your head against the wall trying to change an existing system, just invent a different way of doing it that makes the old one out of date, right? Like it makes it redundant. So this is, it sounds as if, because now we've scaled up to this, scaled up to the highest level, which is this idea of innovative leadership. Having been privileged enough to have you as a leader for a number of years, I can speak to what makes you an innovative leader. But I'm curious, what you just said there, it seems that a lot of, echoing kind of what you said about the classroom as well, is this understanding that there are things that are not working. There are things that we can't do at the moment, but we don't need. So an innovative leader in higher education right now, especially in a cash-strapped, lower enrollment higher education context in Canada at the moment, is a person who is able to empathize with people who are frustrated about those things that are not working. Because it's true. Yes, I would love to be able to offer you a personal instructional designer that could work with you on your course. I would love for that to be the case. But at the end of the day, there is a hack the system approach that you take. I've heard, that you're kind of talking about finding pathways, leveraging, instead of focusing on what doesn't exist, leveraging what does exist and integrating resources in a creative fashion. Is that how you would describe an innovative leader in higher ed these days?
Yeah, I think that's true. I'll push back on the idea of hack the system a little bit, because that might have a negative connotation to some. But it's about, I think, identifying what is available, what resources are available to support an initiative. But I think, and maybe this is innovation, I wish it wasn't, but maybe it is Um, but I think to use your word, empathy, I said it earlier, kindness, um, maybe maybe that's innovation in a lot of
It is kind of.
institutions too.
It is.
Like,
Yeah.
be kind to others without any expectation of receipt. I mean, the receipt comes later. The only non-reciprocal relationship I think a human being has with another human being is with your child, where you're willing to give literally everything, uh, with no expectation of anything back. Um, Short of that, every relationship is reciprocal, but you don't go into developing relationships with the idea of reciprocity or getting something back. You should go into those developing those relationships just from a space of kindness and wanting to help advance whatever's happening. Help the institution to move forward in a productive way, and to help the individuals around you move forward in a productive way. And I've been thinking a lot and talking about that a lot recently. And I think we've been effective in getting things done at the institution over the past several years because because of relationships that we've spent time developing. Don't go to someone when you need them.
Yeah.
Unless it's an absolute emergency and you've never met them before.
Yeah.
Get to know people across your institution, and outside your institution, and develop those relationships over years, literally years.
It's
And
the
then
long game. Well, you're preaching the long game. It is. It really is.
it is, yeah. But it's and I know to say the word long game is a saying, but it's also not a game, right? It's an approach. It's a choice. It's the nature of a human being. And you develop those relationships with people, and then when it comes time to do something, you look, where are my partners? Where how can I help someone else do something? I mentioned Patrick earlier. Patrick's got things he wants to do. How can we help Patrick to advance something? Not just because it's going to serve us at the end of the day, but because we're invested in Patrick's future, and he'll do the same thing.
And we're talking, honestly, this is the nature of human communities. And when I think of my time working in other places and spaces around the world, in particular on the continent of Africa, and you look at how a community operates, it is exactly in this fashion. There are limited resources available, but the human resources and the kindness of people's time, energy, and attention. I can look after your kids. And it's not even always said out loud, like organized, like, yes, it's this organic system of people who have that understanding that we're all in it together. And I know that that's a phrase that, caught fire during the pandemic in terms of that issue, but it partly in response to an innate human quality, which is coming together. Like when you look at the research of capitalistic, individualistic societies, and you look at what happens, we're generally, you look at the staggering crime statistics or the lack of people participating or helping in some areas when they hear gunshots, things like that on the microcosmic scale. When stuff happens on a big scale to a large group of people, natural disasters being a large area of study, we come together. It's natural, it's innate. So what you're talking about, which I think is a really wonderful takeaway, is this relationship-based approach to systemic change in higher education that is ultimately the expression of our innate human nature to work together, empathize, and be kind with each other along the way, which is an undetermined length of time, which is season over season over season, and weathering these things together, Will. So I really appreciate you taking the time to articulate that approach for people.
I think it's the only way to really make change happen in a large, human organization like higher education, is to take that time we can't be transactional about these things. You need to your word, play the long game. You need to be willing. And if you're not innately capable of doing it, anyone can learn it. Just practice to step back and try and see the system from further away. Try and see the dynamics in the system, try and feel them and see, and you're not always going to be right, but that's fine. I mean, you learn something from those mistakes and you learn other things from your successes. So, and those mistakes often lead to unintended outcomes that are beneficial. That project didn't work, but it gave me a different idea.
And the same with relationships, right? Some relationships you cultivate and then some relationships fall away and new ones take their place. And it's all an evolving ecosystem. And all I can say is working with you for almost a decade, Will, I very much value our relationship as both colleagues and friends. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
Thanks, Michelle.
The Education Revolution podcast is produced in-house by community members. And I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Sangara. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and head over to my website to opt in for my newsletter for more ways to connect with some of these big ideas.